Hi, I'm ED-SKaR, and we have another BoltAction FAQ and Errata. These kind of seem to come out whenever they come out and are not really advertised very well. I've checked on the Warlord Games website and it's kind of not there, and even on the community pages it's very hard to find. You sort of have to Google search it and find it that way rather than through their website. But it is here, and this is the 13th of September. Is it September? Apparently it is September. So this is the 13th of September 2022 update, so I'm a few days late for that, but that's just because I only find out about it when people post memes. Now that we do have it, we can have a scroll through. As before, it is a whole long single document that has all of the changes that have been made to each of the individual books for BoltAction to date. And that means that all of the ones here written in black text are the older ones that have already been made, and in fact a lot of the books are being printed with these updates included. The interesting ones that we shall look at today are in green, such as right here. Now the green ones are the brand new changes, so that's the ones for this specific update. And we shall start at the earliest convenience with the armies of Germany, and two changes here. Interestingly, the Panzer III a few different variants, getting an extra medium machine gun coax and increasing the cost by only 5 points. Now, that's quite strange for me, although I do have a Panzer III. My video this week will be on that. Convenient timing, or perhaps unlucky timing. But as far as I'm aware, the rules for these already include one coax machine gun and one hull machine gun, which is what the vehicles actually came with. Adding a second one? I'm not sure. It doesn't make much sense, but if that's the way we're going, that's the way we're going. Interesting. The other one is one of the 250's half-tracks is having anti-tank rifle replaced in the rules because the weapon it has is not an anti-tank rifle. That's just more of a grammar correction than anything else, although that does affect the rules. The Germans also get 2 extra vehicles. The Krupp Pots, which I'm not sure entirely which one they're supposed to be. There's several different variants. It's essentially a truck with an anti-tank gun on it. And then we have the Gepanzerts, which is a half-track with a gun on it. So interesting stuff going on there. And these are in at 65 and 70 points, so pretty cheap options. Both of them 6+ soft skins, so vulnerable to rifle fire. Otherwise, I do notice that there's a little bit of a typo here. A light anti-take gun. That's fine. Let's scroll on and see what other updates. The Americans have something. They've got some more vehicles as well. Essentially, this is a quad 50 on a truck and a quad 50 on just a carriage that can be towed. And that's 4 heavy machine guns, the Browning M2, strapped together in an anti-aircraft mount, which pretty decent versus aircraft, I would say. You're getting 12 shots, so probably getting at least a couple of hits out of that, maybe. But using anti-air defense weapons as anti-air defense in BoltAction isn't really used that much. Most of the time you're using this stuff against infantry, and 12 shots with a +1 on the casualty roll, that's pretty nasty. We also have some updates for the armies of Italy and the Axis. The Breeder artillery tractor. I'm not sure what has changed here because I haven't seen the original rules, but here they are. 44 points regular, 6+ soft skin, 12 transport capacity, and can tow any weapon. And the second update here is that the various cavalry units are equipped with cavalry carbines, which they probably should have been to begin with, rather than rifles. So the cavalry carbine counts as a pistol when they're on the horse, but when they dismount it counts as a proper rifle, so it kind of does both jobs depending on whether they're mounted or not. And that is the armies of complete, but we're about halfway through the document and there's still more to find. There is some FAQ about the base rules, and I just want to look one up because there's one particular one that people have been throwing a hissy fit over. But while I look that up, let's look at the first one first, and it is clarification on the observer and sniper deployment. Although there really needs to be a better name for that in the rulebook, because there's more things than snipers and spotters, observers, that get to use the rule. But it just clarifies how they're being set up, and in certain situations where there's kind of first wave, if they're in a first wave, obviously they're not deploying forwards, and if they're in reserve, they're obviously not deploying forwards. It's only when they're deployed at the beginning of the game, and that's after all of the other deployment is done, that you set up those. Now, moving on to the interesting one, which has got everyone angry and upset, is shirkers. And the reason why everyone's upset about the changes to shirkers, or the clarification here, is that this is a clarification on the way that pin markers work. And the updated version here, the correct way to play it, is that pin markers are always counted double for all situations. So if there's 2 pin markers on the actual unit, you count that as 4. And in the rule in the book, which I'm just reading now, you can kind of, the way that it's written makes it seem like it's only in certain situations, but it does say at the end, always count pin markers as double. 1 pin marker is -2, 2 is -4, and so on. But it's kind of tacked onto a previous sentence, and so that's where that confusion came from. That does mean that shirkers with 3.5 pins or 4 pins will flee the battlefield. So that's kind of appropriate, actually. That's one of the things that's been mentioned, because as soon as you hit your leadership value in pins, you run away, and that would be 7 for shirkers. 8. Well, 4, because you're doubling that to 8 anyway. And the final one here, when we're talking about flanking units, and particularly when you have multiple flanking units, as soon as you deploy, or as soon as you attempt to deploy any one of them, you must reveal all of them at that point. And that's just that clarification. That is, again, kind of what it says, but just clarifying the terminology used. Moving on, we do have one more. This one refers to special rules kind of for each faction, and using a faction in a kind of a unit from one faction in a different army. And the example here is given that a British unit taken in a different army would still get the national characteristics of Britain. You get to choose an extra rifle shot, an extra close combat attack, depending on the situation, depending on which one you take. There are some other options as well, but it only counts for that particular unit, and that unit wouldn't get the special rule for the whole army. So if you're taking, say, Hungarians in a German army, the Hungarians' light machine gun wouldn't get an extra shot, for example. That makes a lot of sense. It does make it a little more difficult to keep track of all the extra rules, but then it also keeps the kind of the characterful nature of that kind of army, that kind of force organization, where it comes to kind of picking the different units, each unit's getting the rules that they should get. So it makes sense for that. And we scroll all of the way down, nearly to the bottom now, although there's a lot to come. There's a whole big block of green in a couple of pages' time. We actually now on the Empire in Flames expansion book, and so let's have a look at what the updates here are. So these are fairly simple, fairly minor rules. Clarification that the Rangers Lead the Way special rule and the Sparrow Tactics special rule effectively are the same thing, and so any of the FAQs about one are going to affect the other, or at least in this case they do. There's the Universal Carrier, is just clarifying how the machine guns work. I think they're changing points cost as well. I did have a copy of Empire in Flames, or I was borrowing one. Need to get that back to confirm. The last one here is the Merrill's Marauders cost 14 points a model, not 13. And there's also another points cost change for the TACOM R2 tank destroyer, 125 points regular. And we have another couple for the Western Desert book. And the big one here, which is pretty handy for the Commonwealth troops here, is that any of the army lists taken from Western Desert get the armies of Great Britain special rules for the British Army, and also the special rules for the particular theatre selector that they're going for. So they can stack up some useful stuff. This is another one that I need to pick up to clarify exactly what that means, but that's all good, just clarifying that you get both in that situation. And then this one's just changing a grammatical error on that line. The Mariana and Palau Islands, and yes, I pronounced this terribly in my last video, and I think I just pronounced it wrong again now. Palau? Something like that. You can correct me in the comments, I'm sure. There's only one update for this one, and that's just that the 320mm Japanese spigot mortar can be taken in a reinforced platoon, as well as Bataan, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. I promised you a big section of green, and here's a big section of green. Let's dig through these. Let's get through this fairly quickly, I think. So the D-Day US sector army list gets SAS Deception Team, 0 to 2 choices there. That should have been there and wasn't. That's just that correction. But then we have Italy, the soft underbelly theatre book. And we have quite a few small changes. I don't think anything here is all that significant. The Ranger Force squad should be paying 3 points for submachine guns, not 2. El Darbo Derby should be 195 points. Again, just points clarifications here. And there is a grammatical change. I have read the soft underbelly book, but I don't remember this specific section. But you pull 2 friendly order dice if you want him to spot, and essentially kind of as an officer using snap 2, it's very similar in effect to that. Small clarification for the special vehicle 251/22 actually should be 251/2, small typo there. They managed to make it into multiple theatre selectors, and the Wesp and the Hummel being added to some as well. And then a whole bunch of different pages having one change, which is replacing the M5A1 Stuart 6 with the M3A3 Stuart 5. Just one typo that's been copy pasted throughout the whole book. It seems to be a lot of that with Italy, but we're kind of just clearing all of that up for anyone wanting to use the soft underbelly theatre book. And for the commandos, instead of getting the national characteristic, supposed to be British commandos, they get the up and atom special rule instead. Unlike the ones before in the kind of further up the page, which we're getting both. In this case, it is replacing that. Now, the last few bits in the errata are for BoltAction Korea and for BoltAction Combined Arms. Because I don't play these games, I don't necessarily have any of the background to really talk about them, particularly Combined Arms, which is quite a different game. And so I shall actually skip over those. If you do play those games, I apologise. But let's wrap this video up. It's probably gone on for quite so long. So thank you very much for following along. If you have any comments to be made, or if you have a way of being notified when the next one comes out, because that seems useful, do pop that in the comment section below. And what do you think about shirkers as well? Does this clarification change things? I don't think it changes things all that much. But thank you very much for watching. I'm ED-SKaR, always will be, and I will see you next time.